Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unauthorized Disclosure podcast. I'm Kevin Gostola, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rania Kalik. Hey, Rania.
Hey, Kevin.
And we're very pleased to have, once again, for a return to Unauthorized Disclosure, our good friend, Rania's co-worker and colleague, Eugene Puryear of Breakthrough News. Welcome, Eugene.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks so much, Rania. Always happy to be here.
And you're here to discuss, well, let's put it on the screen. We'll use our friends over at People's Dispatch to help us set this up just a little bit, where they report that more than 180 have been killed and over 1,800 injured as Sudan's security forces continue infighting in civilian areas. And below there, it says civilians have been forced to hole up in their homes for days with no supply of water or electricity as the fighting rages on, with increasingly heavier weapons. So I'll go ahead and take that down so we can see everybody. And so, Eugene, before we get too far into unpacking the issues and the politics around what is unfolding in Sudan, I believe we probably need to start by giving people introductions to the players who have started this fighting. So can you tell us about... I have this down in front of me. Unfortunately, I haven't committed it to memory yet. But General Mohammed Hamdan, or what they call him, Hemedti, is that right? Or
Hemedti.
Hemedti, yeah. Who is the leader of the paramilitary force, the Rapid Support Forces. And then I understand on the other side, so that's a paramilitary force. Then on the other side, and you correct me if I'm getting it wrong, and if I'm getting it wrong, then it shows you how lost the wider world might be in trying to figure out what's happening in Sudan. But then on the other side, you have General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who is the actually would be the Sudan's military leader, correct?
Yep. Yes, so that's correct. And the sort of acronyms that many people may see are SAF, that's Sudanese Armed Forces, that is the forces led by General al-Burhan, and RSF, that's the Rapid Support Forces that are led by Hemedti. So SAF versus RSF is the basic set of players here. And they essentially, the easiest way to think about them is these are the two people who essentially have the monopoly of armed force in Sudan. The RSF, which is technically a part of Sudan's military, but sort of a separate paramilitary, but very powerful force. And then on the other hand, Sudan's like actual military. So these two forces that have been working together for some time, for many years, have now split apart on the basis of a power struggle in terms of the transition. But just to give people some sense of who they are. So what the most important context for that is this. In 2018, 2019, there's a big protest movement that arises. The leader of Sudan for many years, from 1989, Omar al-Bashir, he is turfed out. Now, the military, which was central to the al-Bashir rule, if you will, to the National Congress Party rule, had both the military and also a number of sort of other forces they had, brought up in the context of various internal insurgencies and conflicts. And one of those was the RSF. So the protest movement was so powerful, a subset of this military, including the forces led by al-Burhan and the Rapid Support Forces, they basically just threw Bashir overboard because they could see that the whole system could be wiped away by this mass protest movement. So that's how they got into place where they were, is that they essentially tried to make an accommodation with this huge uprising of millions of people in Sudan who wanted the National Congress Party regime out, and they wanted to create a situation where they could maintain a significant subset of their power. And we can get more into this, of course, by trying to make some sort of government with civilians, some forces who had been opposed to al-Bashir. That ultimately did not work out. So these two forces launched a coup in 2021, but that also did not work out. And so now they're in a situation where there's a very complex subset of negotiations that are going on about what the future post-coup is going to be in Sudan. But one of the key questions is, who will hold the monopoly of force and thus be in the pole position to dictate and determine a lot of what those outcomes could potentially be. And that's the power struggle between these two individuals who hold this sort of competing monopoly of armed force to try to push one or the other out of the way so that they can have the sort of pole position. So SAF, RSF, come from the same sort of background, come from the same sort of entity and, quote unquote regime, but also now in the post-Bashir, post-National Congress Party era, have been unable to really fully reach an accommodation about, who should have the top dog role.